Okay, so a big welcome to our 5th integration webinar. Big welcome, Bonnie. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Spring is edging into summer and the flowers are blooming. That's very happy for me.
Great to see you as always, and I'm really looking forward to tonight. As I was saying to you earlier, we didn't get any specific questions in, but a few people were interested in you speaking again on co-attaching, and then speaking how relational neuroscience views separation individuation. So it'd be great if you would give us a rundown on that. But just to go through a few practicalities or a few technicalities before we start, any problems with tech, what we suggest is that you log off and log back on again using the link provided. If you have any problems, you can send an email to info@pcpsi.ie. As usual, feel free to come on and interact with Bonnie. If you want to come on, what we need you to do is put up your yellow hand function, which is under reactions, which is on the right hand as I look at the screen. And again, if you don't want to come on, you can use the Q&A function to send in questions. Just to say that Robert is in the background, keeping the show on the road. So a big thank you to Robert, as always. And so that's going to be the schedule. We're going to start shortly now. Bonnie's going to do a meditation, which I'm really looking forward to. Then you'll talk for a bit, Bonnie, and then we'll take questions. And we'll go on. We'll go for hopefully about an hour.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's great. It's wonderful to see you, Liam, and to know, and Robert, of course, too, and to know that you're out that there's those of you that are here with us today have an interest in this. You know, this it's so easy, I think, to kind of let go of something. We learn something, or we begin to immerse ourselves in something, and then we can just drop it and go on to the next thing. It's the most natural thing in the world, particularly for our left hemispheres to do. But also there's just such a push to learn more and more and more and more that's new. And there's a lovely thing about curiosity and seeking and all of that. At the same time, the things that are going to be most meaningful, I think, for us both in life and also in how we do our practice of whatever that practice is, the practice of being a parent, the practice of being a therapist, the practice of just walking around in this world, you know, and being with one another, how we are in our relationships, that if we can stay with one thing and keep coming back to it, it begins to change our perception of the world and our behaviors toward one another. And that need that we have on this planet for attention and kindness is just, it's an enormous need that goes so often unmet, unfortunately. So I'm grateful to those of you who are here, or anybody that watches this later, that this feels like something worth investing that extra energy to keep our attention on it and to keep working with it together. So we begin with our meditation. Even though it's the same meditation we do every time, what we're doing is building up a pattern of relating to our bodies, of coming into our bodies, and then of offering a non-judgmental open space to people. And so if we kept changing and doing different meditations, that could be a lovely experience, but it wouldn't allow us to do this thing, which is to build up this pattern in our body and in our way of attending. So that's why we do the same meditation every time. And it feels important to do that at the beginning. I mean, for some of you, you're right at the end of a long day. Some of us, like here in Washington, are in the middle of our day, but there's been busyness all around. There's been much to attend to. And so we get the opportunity to come together and shift a little bit, to really arrive, to really come together when we do this practice. So we're going to do that. And I know it always helps me to just attend for a moment to my neck and shoulders and arms and hands and see where they would most like to just rest right now. And then for me, my feet flat on the floor feels really stabilizing and balancing. So I like to do that. You can sense how that is for you. And then eyes going closed. And then inviting our attention to drop down to our feet and from our feet into the earth. And sensing that in whatever way is most natural for us, as we just begin to feel into how our living body is in relationship with the living body of this planet that sustains us every day. And then we rest there for a little bit. And then continuing with earth and feet, we just begin to invite our awareness to move up our legs as we begin to get a sense of the qualities in our muscles right now. Just arriving and listening. For me, it really helps to just place my hands on my thighs where I'm making contact. I'm coming into relationship with those muscles a little bit. And again, just resting there, listening. If our attention wanders off, we just gently bring it back. And then next, we can just invite our attention to come up now into the belly area, this remarkable brain, and just feeling perhaps gratitude for how it supports our immune system and how it digests relationships as well as food, how it is the guardian of our safety, so sensitive to whether we are having a safe feeling throughout our system or a not safe feeling all the time. And so again, we just arrive and we don't try to change anything, we just listen. And then coming up now to also include the heart and the chest area. And when we arrive there, perhaps we can sense something about the quality of connection that we're experiencing right now. And then continuing with earth and feet, legs and muscles, belly and heart. We come up now also to include the throat, our jaws, up to the area around our eyes and our forehead. And again, just arriving to listen and to sense the qualities that are there right now, any tension, any relaxation, just whatever is there, just holding it with gentleness as best we can in this moment. And we perhaps continue up a little more and embracing both hemispheres of the brain, just inviting them into whatever relationship they are having right now to show that to us, to let us feel into those two hemispheres a bit. And then we begin to just glance upward at the sky, sensing the vastness above us, the spaciousness, and how it's the complement of the solidity beneath our feet that's here below us, and how both of these resources hold us at every moment. And then with just a small shift of attention coming to the breath, just as it is right now. The in-breath and the out-breath, just the natural flow that's there with each breath. And sensing perhaps how we are entangled with all the green things on the planet, how we're breathing together, and just enjoying that for a moment. And then on the next inhalation, on the exhalation, just inviting our awareness to open into a bowl of receptivity that invites everything that is inside us, thoughts, feelings, sensations, whatever is there, and anything coming in from the outside. And then perhaps including our inner community, if that feels like something we want to do, inviting any members of that inner community who want to be here, any of the ancestors, if that feels right or good to us. And then just holding an open, tender space to receive whatever comes in. Just doing the best we can on this in this particular moment. It does vary from moment to moment. So we just offer what we can. And then in this little deeper place where we've arrived, just noticing if there's a word that comes up that, or two, or whatever, that whatever arises spontaneously, just welcoming that as we are in this little deeper place, what's there inside us. It could be anything, but without any, as little judgment as we can manage, just letting whatever wants to come in this moment. And then we begin to just invite our awareness to expand out to include everyone who's here with us now, everyone who will ever see this video. And then if you feel like you would like to, it would be wonderful, Robert, if you would open the chat, and anybody who wants to put their word in that chat so we can get the sense of being here together, that would be lovely. I don't know if my whole ease, beloved, share, gratitude and hope, spring, knowing, joy, I surrender, glow, pondering, relief, soothed, hearts coming, acceptance and held, tender and love, peace, fun, bubble, gratitude, planned playtime, safety, lovely, yeah, calm, excitement, warmth. Yeah, thank you for that. And mine today's, as I look out my window, there are about 8 very tall evergreen trees here. So, and there have been 50 birds on the bird feeder today. So it's definitely got that spring outdoors, different green colors. So for me, it was trees and birds today. And then airplane as one just flew over while we were finishing up. So those of you who have been experiencing this kind of meditation may notice that I added the 2 hemispheres of the brain, which wasn't my idea. Someone wrote to us and said, why do you not do that? And I don't have a concrete answer for that. So I've been trying it both ways, both without including the 2 hemispheres when we get to that part and including it. And so I still can't give any kind of concrete reason about why, but I'm more comfortable not. So I don't most of the time for myself. But you could try both, coming up, and as we do the face and all of that, and then coming to the 2 hemispheres and opening, and just see how it is for you. Because I would hope that you could take this meditation and be able to just do whatever it is you want with it in terms of adapting it to what feels best for you. Like maybe there's other stopping places along your body that you want to do. Maybe you like the feeling of including the hemispheres and all of that. But mainly, I guess the one thing I would say is that I know I've mentioned a couple times, but could maybe say again, is it really helps me if my hands are making contact, like with my thighs when I'm checking in with the muscles there, or on my belly or heart, or even coming up to the face, eyes, that there's something about coming into relationship with those parts that really helps me to get more of a sense of conversation with those parts. And again, this might not feel good to you at all. So it's, again, just something to check out to see what are the ways that you most get into that like conversation with those parts of our physical body that we're focusing on in the moment. So just a couple of things to say about that. And actually, there's a third thing I could say, which is it's also kind of helpful to sometimes practice doing this rather quickly, of just feeling the grounding of your feet. You can do it even standing up and then just kind of coming up your body, coming up, opening to the sky, taking a few breaths, 2 or 3 breaths, and then kind of opening into this receptivity, so that instead of it becoming that there are all these stopping places, that it's more like a flow from the earth all the way up into embodiment, and then opening into a space to receive people. Because often that's all the time we may have before our child walks in the door, or before as we're shifting between the people that we're seeing, or before we go to a social engagement or something, that there's not a lot of time, but we can even then feel that flow. And because we've been doing this, some of us, for quite a long while now, our bodies already know what comes next and will help us with this. So anyway, you can play around with that as well. So I hope that this meditation becomes just such a wonderful ongoing resource for you, as it really is for me. I'm very, very happy to be doing it. As many times as I wind up doing it, it feels like it continues to grow and all of that. So anyway, that's our beginning. And now maybe you have a sense that we've really arrived, that we've moved from wherever we were before we got here. I had been seeing people this morning, and now I'm really here. I'm fully present and open and ready to be with everybody with full attention as best, 33% with rupture and repair, as we say, not perfect, but good, really part of each other. And then seeing all your words, now I can feel us as a group that's here together. And that's really wonderful. So, as Liam was saying, he was wondering if we could talk a little bit today about co-attaching and about individuation. It is interesting because with the neuroscience now, and especially with relational neuroscience, to begin to go back and look at terms and concepts that we've had from different schools of therapy all along, and see what does the neurobiology of relationships tell us about the nature of these kinds of things. So, for example, this isn't those words, but one that caught me pretty early on in this process was the idea of transference and countertransference, and the kind of judgments we can put on that, both from the person doing the transference with us and us transferring back to people. That's often gotten a bad rap. And then we begin to look at the neuroscience and begin to understand that what this is one person's system touching the others, which is going on all the time, and stimulating something in that system, which is then handed back to me. So if I'm with you and you smile at me, that comes toward me and touches something in my system. And I'm going to have an inner response to that, a lot of it below conscious awareness, some of it in conscious awareness. My body's going to respond to that. So in that moment, as you smile at me, I'm having a response back. Now, if for some reason something else is going on for me, and maybe you don't smile at me, your face is just kind of neutral or something, and it touches something in me, then I'm going to have maybe a different kind of response coming back to you. But what it really is our implicit worlds engaging with each other. They aren't separate things, transference and what we call countertransference. There's this ongoing touching that goes on, and ongoing responsiveness that happens with one another. Sometimes it's touching old implicit things. Sometimes it's this wonderful feeling of just the beauty of connection with each other that's not encumbered by old trauma or anything like that. But all of it is this mutual responsiveness. So then that begins to seem like it's just a normal human process. It's not something we have to judge. It's something we can notice part of, but we'll never notice all of, because we don't have the conscious bandwidth to even begin to hold a small fraction of what's going on inside. And so when we're not making judgments about these responses, we're more open to being curious about them. So if I'm with you and I notice I'm starting to feel a little more guarded and a little more something's happening, and I might not even be clear what, if I know that these are just normal ways that we are together, all of us humans, I can begin to be curious about, did something happen inside of me, maybe in our interaction, but maybe more inside of me that's got me a little scared, and I can do that in a more compassionate and kind of way. And I can do that also when I'm with my people, and I begin to have some sort of response. And I can also receive their responses to me with kindness and curiosity, knowing that all of this is just part of what's going on every day in every relationship. So that's one example to me of how relational neuroscience can often soften and bring more compassion about in certain areas. So if we go then to attaching relationships, and we also go to like stages of development kind of thing, which to me is where individuation comes in. What might we be able to say about that? What is the experience of that? So there is no such thing as just one-sided attachment relationships. I know I would have so many play therapists that would tell me that in their training, they were told, do not attach to your child clients. And first of all, that didn't settle ever in me as making any sense. But I know that the concern is that the child will attach to the therapist instead of to their parents. So there's really room for all those people to have an attachment relationship with this child, but that wasn't the way it was seen. So I understand it comes from a good concern for the welfare of the child and maybe even the therapist. But what we learn neurobiologically is there is no such thing. Attachment, this movement toward attachment is the most foundational genetic piece we have. We go back to Stephen Porges, right? Connection is a biological imperative. So there is a yearning for warm connections from in utero all the way up until we're ready to leave this planet, maybe beyond, But that is so much a part of us that what we are in is a series of co-attaching relationships throughout our lives. And that means that my attachment system, as I meet you, even for the first time, my attachment system is alert. Is this a person I can be with? Is this a person who will receive me? And many systems in my body are involved. There's certainly that when I say, is this person available to me? I'm asking, for one thing, about the quality of their nervous system right now. Are they having a neuroception of safety that welcomes me? Or are they feeling scared? Just to meet somebody for the first time can be really scary. And so they're not so open. They're more tight. So we're asking about the nervous system. We're certainly asking about what's the seeking system doing in the midbrain. Is it more oriented toward a fear of not connecting, or is it more oriented toward the openness to connection in this moment? So we're asking about the belly brain and safety. We're asking especially in attaching relationships about the heart brain. So if you come toward me for the first time, you don't know me at all. And you have had a lot of wounding, the information of which is contained in the heart as well as other parts, but very much in the heart brain is sensitive and is learning about the quality of connection. So you meet me for the first time, your heart may be quite on guard about who is this person? Is this an okay person for me to even begin to approach? Or if my heart is really wounded, I might have the same kind of response. Or if I've had a lot of wounding in relationships, and particularly in groups of people, maybe groups really scare me. And I'll raise my hand on that one because I did have those experiences when I was young. And groups to this day are still a little dicier for me to come into and feel a kind of safety in them. So that back and forth of passing information about our system to the other person, again, a lot of it below conscious awareness and us to them, is always going to modify or color the quality of the attaching that's going to happen. But attaching is going to happen unless my protectors are so strong, because I'm so scared of relationships, that I really have had myself blocked off. But even then, the need to attach is so powerful that little tendrils of reaching out are probably going on anyway, really like testing the waters to see. Because attaching is just the most fundamental thing. So obviously we're attached in every conceivable way to our mother when we're in utero. We're umbilically said, we are inside this womb that is our home, that is our safety, that is our nest to grow in. And then when we come out of that, there is such a strong, strong, strong need to have a sense that we haven't lost the safety of that containment. And that often happens through the gaze with the mother in the next few months, but especially in those early moments right after birth. If that gaze is steady and warm and enveloping, then there is a way that we feel as the baby, we still feel that merging, like we're still held inside. So we start out as two beings, but in a kind of singular relationship that's about both people being merged in each other. And then as our brains develop, we begin to have a little more sense of, you're over there and I'm over here. And I need you and I want to be with you and I want to be part of you. And there are certainly moments where I want to completely merge in you and just let myself go. And so we do that, and we see the stages of development where little ones begin to eventually move away a little bit, but they're always looking over their shoulder. Is mom still there? Is dad still there? Is my person still available to me? Oh, they are? Okay, I can go out a little further. So we begin to explore, but what gives us the capacity to do the exploration is that I am day by day, more and more, as this little one, internalizing the presence of this other person who is with me. And I can be internalizing them as really with me, really connected, and having this lovely experience inside of that warmth and connection. I may be internalizing them as somebody whose back is turned most of the time, which is very scary. And I begin to adapt to that in various kinds of ways. Maybe I am scared and I cry. Maybe I begin to try to take care of my own self, which I'm very bad at that age. I don't have the capacity for it. So it's an enormous amount of draining work to try to do that. Or maybe I have a parent who is attaching to me and clearly loving me, but is all over me all the time and needing me to constantly attend to them, even when I need to rest, in which case I will have to adapt to that. But there's always going to be the co-attaching. The parent is attaching to me, or whoever it is, but we'll use moms and dads just to hold that place, or is attaching to me the way that their system knows how to attach. And I am coming out of my genetic need to attach, going to parallel my attachment with them and adapt to that in the way that lets me stay as connected as I can stay. And we continue to do this with greater and greater maturity, meaning our brains are more and more complex as they differentiate all the way up through life. But how we do that is going to reflect how it happened early on, if we had some painful attachments, and unless we get some help with that and work with somebody who can help us reshape our attachments, our attachment patterns are going to follow along. Now, the complexity of that is that even say my mom or dad isn't in the same attachment style all the time. If my mom is tired, let's say, she's gotten really good at avoidance, she finds a way to just disappear. If my mom is well rested and in a good state, she's pretty secure. And if things are blowing up in her world and she's very anxious, we're going to be ambivalently attached. So all of our parents are giving us also probably lots of different moments of attachment with different styles. A few parents may be pretty consistent in their attachment style, but it's not the norm. There's usually quite a bit of variety within a parent about how they're responding to their world and to what they learned, to their experiences. So I'm not a fan of putting attachment in boxes, but more of kind of having a wheel of attachment and kind of noticing where along that wheel, was this particular experience and how did it affect me? So you can feel over time that what happens, and I think this is what we call individuation, is that over time, a pair of people, a mom and dad and the baby, go through this differentiation process where the baby is as this baby goes to toddler and elementary and all the way up, is more and more taking in what they can from this family surround, and it builds into their own system so that they're walking around not alone, but with these people all of the time. And when it has gone very well and that there's a very secure inner community system inside, then what we call often self-regulation or individuation can happen pretty smoothly, because the person has everybody they need in there to be able to go on and become what looks like a more whole self person. But that isn't what's happening inside. Inside is this wonderful community. So that's my take on individuation, is that happens in the most sweet way when we've had this support. And then again, the other complicating factor is that the word individuation is about becoming an individual, which we never are. We are always community, and we are always dependent on the community around us. So the word individuation reflects that left hemisphere place and way of seeing and feeling things, where the goal is to become an individual who is self-reliant, self-organizing, self-regulating, on and on. And so the neuroscience helps us know that this has been a wounded version, we could say, of what it is to grow and develop, and that the bigger story is around what's happening internally, where this community is developing. And also, in addition to the community developing, we begin to realize that throughout our lives, we will need others in our lives, because connection is a biological imperative, and that becoming self-anything is not really what our neurobiology is about at all. So how am I doing, Liam? Am I hitting the points you wanted me to?
Oh, I'm going to give you an A plus, Bonnie.
Oh, well, thank you. Oh.
Very good.
Yeah, it's a big topic, because so much of the language in psychotherapy has developed out of this left hemisphere way of feeling the world, experiencing that there is no felt sense of we in the left hemisphere. And so we have these categories of development that reflect much more. I mean, even Maslow, who I really respect, is about self-actualization. So it's like that, but there is no such thing as self-actualization. All that kind of realization and growth and development happens in community. It doesn't happen by ourselves. It can't.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, we need to redo all of that stuff.
Super.
In fact, I actually played around with an attachment-based hierarchy, like Maslow's, and I'll send it to Mary, and we can put it up on the website to just put it side by side with Maslow. And then Maslow actually developed his work out of his contact with the Blackfeet tribe, that Blackfeet Nation. Only he completely turned it upside down and turned it into an individual thing. It's like, anyway, which is what the left hemisphere does. It's like it just cannot see the world a different way when it's on its own. The left hemisphere is essential to our functioning in the world and to our development of wisdom and all of that. But when it takes the lead and shuts out the right hemisphere, it is blind as can be to how things really work. So.
Yeah, so are you okay if we bring someone on, Bonnie? And
Sure.
So Robert, could you bring on Mary, please?
Then we can take a breath, because I was talking and I get talking fast when I get excited. So now we can breathe for a moment while Mary arrives.
Oh.
Hey, Mary.
Hiya. I didn't really think, I didn't mean to put my hand up. That was a mistake, but I do have a question.
Oh, well, good. I'm glad you put your hand up.
My question is really, can you say what you've been saying in the context of people with autism, or what autism means, because it seems to be a lack of awareness of others at some level, or is it more fear-based? I'm just wondering, is there awareness there, but it's not comfortable for some reason? And so anyway, maybe you'd say something about that.
Yeah, and I always want to preface this with, I am not an expert in autism at all, but I know a little bit, and I know some things from two friends of mine who worked with autistic kids for years, not as therapists, but as play specialists. And they would just go in and play with these kids in their schools, and especially they would play with them when they were feeling very disorganized. So one of the things about autism is that, and again, as we know, there's a whole spectrum, and every single person on that is a unique individual. But one of the things that is part of this thing is that our brains are meant to differentiate, meaning that we get to the place where we need fewer and fewer actual brain cells for something to encode in our brain. So by that I mean, if you have when little kids are very sensitive to sound, because this cortex for sound hasn't differentiated yet. So a lot of neurons are firing with any sound. So it's pretty overwhelming. Then as time goes on, groups of neurons smaller groups of neurons will have a note or a kind of instrument or whatever it is, so that fewer and fewer neurons have to fire, and then it's not so overwhelming, and you can hold more experience at a time. And different parts of our brain go through critical periods of this at different ages, but all of them pretty early on. So what happens in autism, at least for a lot of people, is that the growth factor that causes this differentiation to happen goes up really fast, spikes, and drops before the brain has differentiated enough. So the brain continues to be hyper sensitive to taking in information. So what you said about fear-based, I think, is really very close to that, because when we go into a kind of overwhelm, we're scared. And so to have all this come in is overwhelming for the system. About the most complex information we take in is through the face of others. There's so much going on. We're reflecting the state of our nervous system. We're reflecting so much in our face. So for a person with autism whose facial recognition cells have not differentiated very much, it's like a flood. So they want to not look. So what my friends would do with these kids when they would be brought in because they were acting up in class, meaning they were overwhelmed and they were doing things that were out of bounds, they would start by being perfectly still. And often one of them would even just lie on the floor of the gym, which is where this would take place, and let the child interact with them the way the child needed. Mm-hmm. And so maybe the child would circle around for a while, or would go off in a corner for a little while, and then they would come back, because the need and want for connection is there. It's just so hard to come by because it's so frightening and overwhelming. And often by the end of a half hour or so, as this child would come closer and maybe begin to touch a little bit and all of that, then Mark would sit up and he would begin to interact a little bit, but always watching for any sign that it was too much. So very slow, very quiet. And more times than not, this child would wind up often curled up next to him or in his lap.
And do we know why some children develop this way and not others? I mean, why do their systems not pace themselves?
I don't think we know much, because it seems like it's really different. I mean, there's theories around like exposure to white noise, or like living near the above ground trains in Chicago. Right next to them, there's been some research done. Does that predispose children to that? And you can imagine if you're having that kind of noise, maybe your system would just, So there may be something about that. There may be genetic pieces. There may be somebody who is more inclined that way. And what we do know is if the system, what we used to call Asperger's, which is higher functioning, often the outcome for a child with that predisposition, with parents who are not able to attach very much, is so much worse than it is if they have parents who are very sensitive and tender and really good at attachment, that provides more of what the child's system needs. Mm-hmm. So I don't think, it seems like there's a lot of things that happen in this world, like cancer or autism, that have many, many different strands that come together that cause this. But it certainly is not a lack of empathic capacity. It is not a lack of, they thought kids had no mirror neurons. That's not the case at all. It's their mirror neurons firing is just like a storm. Okay. So they have to get away from it. But the lovely thing after Mark would work with these kids is the teacher would come back in, the one who brought them in because they were acting up. This child takes the teacher's hand very calmly, goes back to class and does fine. Yeah. Okay. So there's something about all of this and the gentleness and the slowness and the tenderness that is required. It can be very instructive to read the blogs of some people who are autistic writing about their experience. I've been reading one of those. This man said, "People think I don't have empathy." He said, "That's not the problem. It takes me a long time to get to the place where I'm responding to something. And if you're a neurotypical person, you've had 10 or 40 or 100 different feelings by the time I'm having empathy with the one that you had 3 minutes ago." Okay. Okay. Right. I thought that Thank you. Really, yeah. Thank you for the question. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mary.
Okay, Bonnie. So we'll take a few questions that are after coming in through the Q&A. So there's no name with this question. On the theme of attachment, my son has recently been evaluated by an educational psychologist who identified a mix of autism and attachment issues. This is helpful, but also very painful in relation to the attachment. It's hard not to feel to blame, even though I was just passing on intergenerational trauma and my own anxious attachment pattern. Also, the report doesn't come with any advice or guidance for me on how to heal the attachment. Do you have any thoughts on this? Thank you.
Yeah, well, I just I'm very feel very tender about this experience that you're having, and almost always with kiddos on the spectrum, there's going to also be attachment kinds of issues, because our system is operating at a very different pace than the child's is. And so it's really hard to modulate that and all of that kind of thing. We're all passing on some kind of intergenerational trauma. And I don't know that that's causal at all for what's happening here. One of the things that comes to me and was really important for me over the years with my daughter, not that she has any kind of an autistic sort of thing, but she was certainly receiving from me, who hadn't had therapy yet when I had her, a lot of the results of my own trauma. And so what's been most important for our relationship is that I've had therapy for so long about it, and I continue to heal, and will continue to heal probably till the end from the significant traumas that happened. And in the process, she and I worked through these issues of the way I passed on, not the acts of the trauma, but the felt sense of it with her as well. And she has continued to also be in therapy. So it's important to find the right support people for sure, and continue to work on our own intergenerational stuff, because just like we pass that on, we are also passing on our healing, any healing that we ourselves do. I don't know where you live and if there might be significant help from more relationally based therapists that work specifically with kids with autism, because that, I think, when I was describing what Mark does with these kiddos, is it's all relational based, and that for healing the attachment wounds, as well as for helping the nervous system find calm, seems to me to be the magic combination, rather than more behaviorally based kinds of interventions, which have been for so long more the norm. But now, as I understand it in the autism community, there's much more of an understanding that these relationally based supports are providing something at a much deeper level than simply changing behavior. But my heart really goes out to you. I know these things are so hard, and I hope there's, like I said, I don't know where you are, but I hope that there are resources near you that can help, because everybody in this system needs support. We all do all the time, but especially with this. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Bonnie. And the next question is from Delma. How do you work with a person's anger?
Well, this will be a strange answer. With gratitude. Anger is such a profound protector, and it's a sign that the person has reached the end of their rope. One of the things that when we talk about in the midbrain, we have these 7 neurobiological systems that activate according to what's happening right now, that are like the very root of our emotions. And rage is one of them. And it's one of them that's been there since very early on in evolution. You know, I don't know if cockroaches get angry, but I know alligators do. And so we go back to this place of discovering what is the value of it. I mean, that's what I'm always curious about. What is the value of a particular circuitry in the body that's been preserved over the course of evolution? So one of the ways that Panksepp talks about this is that rage is how we protest when we've reached the end of our rope, and that it's there to try to protect from further incursion somehow. But it's also there to attract attention so that somebody will come to us and help us. So rage to me is actually it's easier for me to sit with than despair because of my own internal makeup. If we've had a lot of rage in the family, then it may be harder to do that, and we may need to continue to do a lot of work on the rage that we've experienced that's now it scares us when it comes toward us. And so that piece is really important. But the way I see rage is that underneath rage is secondary in a way. It's not the first thing we experience. We experience pain or fear. We often then try to reach out through letting somebody know we're scared or hurting or whatever. And then if they don't respond, we go into rage. And you do that often enough, and you just go straight to rage because you know nobody's coming. Implicitly, you've learned that nobody's coming. And so you go straight to rage. But if I can remember that then I can be curious with this person and say, what's hurting you or scaring you? After I've held their rage and listened to their rage, even if it's at me, although often it isn't, but it's still rage in the room and that energy is resonating. If I can say, could we, when they're ready to pause, see if we can ask what's hurting or scaring underneath the rage, then often the person will be able to drop into the tears or the shaking or whatever it is that is the core of why this rage has been needed. Because we don't go into rage until at some point we've just reached the end of our rope, where there's no more possibility of getting anybody to come and be with us and stay with us with whatever's going on. So, but I do, especially for women, rage is viewed as bad behavior. I suppose it's viewed as bad behavior in men too, but women it's been tried to be squelched out of women, I guess I would say, forever and ever and ever. And so it's a very complex cultural issue too about, is rage okay? And then for me with my people, it's always, what are you doing with the rage? You know, if you're using it to really hurt other people, then that we're going to work on in certain ways. But if this is just rage that's welling up inside of you, I hear it. I want to hold it. And I want us to be able to drop down into what the ways that you have been violated or ignored so much that rage was your only option that was left. So seeing it as a protector for a starter is help. helpful.
Okay, Bonnie, thank you.
You.
Fortunately, we're coming to the end. We have a
Oh
few.
my gosh. That was fast.
Absolutely. Time flies when you're enjoying yourself.
Oh, goodness.
I have a few announcements to make, but do you want to say anything before we finish up?
Gosh, I mean, I really just appreciate your questions, and I appreciate this conversation about autism. And I did see in the chat that there was someone who said he or she said was autistic, and I didn't get to read the comment, but I will go back and read those comments because I wanted to see them, but I can't read and talk at the same time. So thank you all for what you come with and what you contribute, and just for being here.
Thank you, Bonnie. So just to say, our next integration webinar was supposed to be on the 1st of June, but unfortunately we've needed to change that now, and it's going to be on the 13th of July. But we'd let everybody know by email anyway, so don't worry about the dates. And anybody that hasn't signed up for the year with Bonnie, which will start on the 20th of July, there's still some spaces available. So if you want to join up, I think Robert has kindly posted the link. Yeah, so the link is up there now if anybody wants to sign up. And is there anything else?
Well, just the one thing I would say about that, Liam, is that as we're getting ready for this, as I'm continuing to work with a number of other small groups of people in consultation, I'm just more and more excited about us being able to do this in a living way, month after month after month, where people come in and we actually have this experience together. So I'm really glad we're doing this, because I think that's where what we're learning begins to really be able to flow in us more. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And just to say a big thank you to Robert as well for keeping the show on the road tonight. Thanks, Robert. And I look forward to seeing everybody on the 13th of July. Okay, thanks, buddy.
Bye.
Bye.